Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get through 6.3 here. So here's an example. It's showing a little video tower. Here's an example, or computer tower. All right, it's an example of where we do have to worry about volume. You have to worry about the motherboard, how that's going to fit in, the size of the fans you're going to be using, what type of fans, water cooling, all that. All that is an idea of how much can we pack into this case. Is the case going to be big enough? Do we have to do some things externally? Like, do we have to do an external capture card or all these wonderful things? You can build cases for all of it. You can, honestly, there's some weird cases out there, but not as many, like custom weird. It's got like notches on the side and things like that. So most of the time, if you're the one working for a company who's going to be designing this, or if you're going to be building it, you do have to be worried, is what I'm purchasing going to actually fit? Perfect example, me, I bought a computer. I used it for the longest time. It was just fine, but then I started doing things that were pushing the processor a little too much, so I needed to buy a fan. I just went online, looked up what's the best fan that there's going to be, and hey, I'm going to go for that, and I bought it. It was about 1/8 of an inch too big. I couldn't put the outside of the case back on, so I had to keep the inside of the case exposed to the outside, which means more dirt, more dust, more everything else. Not a good thing, not a bad thing, not a horrible thing anyway, but not a great thing. So I made a mistake because I didn't do the research, I didn't think about it, and if I did, I didn't do the right math. So let's get into this. Write and solve an equation to find the height of a computer tower. In this case, it's just the height, okay? So what we do know is we know volume is going, I forgot to activate the pin. Volume is going to be equal to the area of my base times my height. Now, the area of my base is the same as my top because base, bottom, what it's sitting on. The shape of what it's sitting on is a rectangle. We can see that because this is rectangular prism. So I need to find the area here. The good news is I have that. The bad news is I'm trying to find the height. So I can't just do what I'm used to and just substitute only on the right-hand side. This is a perfect example of how formulas actually help us. As many variables as a formula has on either side of the equal sign, almost knocked something off. We can use the formula that many different ways. So what I mean by that is this. We have V on the left-hand side, and we have V because V stands for volume, and what that equals over here. What I don't have is H. Now there's two options I have, and I'm going to go through both real quick. I can solve what I have for H to get it to look like what I'm used to. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just going to take a little bit more time. So here what I'm going to do is I want to move V, so I have to divide both sides by V. V divided by V is 1, and then B, capital B, H over V. But I got to get rid of that H. I'm currently multiplying by it, so in order to move that H, I actually want to divide, there we go, each side by H. I did that over here just because it would look weird if I wrote the division with a division. All right, so this becomes 1. Oh, yeah. I'm just going to start over, but I'm not going to stop recording. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about the idea of finding the missing dimension of a rectangular prism. In this case, we're used to saying, hey, we need to find volume, and volume equals the area of the base times the height. But what happens when we actually know the volume of our shape, but we're missing one of the dimensions? Here's a fun fact. With as many variables as any formula has had that you have ever seen, that's how many different ways you can use that formula. Let me show you what I mean. There's two ways we can look at doing this. we can either rearrange first or we can rearrange second. In other words, there's 3 steps to this. We can either rearrange as the first step or rearrange as the second step. Doesn't matter which one we do, we're going to get the same answer. Let me prove it to you. Currently, we're used to seeing volume equals the area of the base times the height, and we're used to finding out what the volume is. But it actually tells us what the volume is here. It's 1,792 cubic inches. So I'm not going to be finding V, and sometimes it's easier if we think about it like this. Since I'm not finding V, that's not what needs to be alone. What needs to be alone is my H. So I can solve this, equation. Sorry, this equation right here can be solved for H simply by divide each side by B, and I'm left with volume over the area of the base is equal to my height. Now, if I do this, I have V equals 1792, so I can substitute. I also have the area of my base, which has been right here the whole time, is 16 by 7, which means it's 16 times 7. And that's going to equal my height. Now let me show you, we could have actually done that substitution first, then rearrange. We're going to get the same answer. So here, again, I'm going to start with this equation, but instead of rearranging the variables, I'm going to go ahead and substitute. Actually, let me change this. We're going to go ahead and start with this first and substitution. So I can say 1,792 equals the area of my base, which is 16 times 7 times H, okay? So here, I'm going to get that 1,792 divided by 112, because 16 times 7 is 112. So actually, I'm going to go and put that over here. And over here, change back color here, and I get 1,792 over 112 equals H. I'm almost there on the proving that I'm right, that we can do this either first or second. So this is going to cancel over here, and I get 1,792 divided by 112 equals H. And if you see, there we go. These two right here are exactly the same problem. So we either substitute then rearrange, or we rearrange and then substitute. Which one you want to do is up to you, but either way, that's the process in doing this. So there's not like a set 3 steps except what you do, but order is kind of up to you in the first choice, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So here, from here on out, I'm just going to solve 1,792 divided by 112. And since I'm bringing them together, I'll just start with this. I get 16 equals H, because 1,792 divided by 112 is equal to 16. And I keep my H. So my height, which is what it's been asking for, is 16. Now I'm going to go ahead and write it as my height is 16, and this would be the form of my final answer. Not because it's wrong to say this, it's right, but it's just like writing a paper, okay? The formal way to be able to get our answer across is always have the variable equals our answer. So if you got any questions at this point, raise your hand. If we're not in silent mode, you can talk to your neighbor, work with them. If you're at home, you can email me. But make sure to get your questions answered. Outside of that, side note, little reminder, breakdown, I guess, of this kind of problem. Whenever you're using a formula, and it's whenever, it could be volume, it could be area, it could be the quadratic formula, it could be Pythagorean theorem, it could be any formula you see the rest of your life. It's really any formula. You have to know 2 facts. Number 1, as many variables as you have in that formula, is as many different ways that you can use that formula. Fact number 2, you can either rearrange, then substitute, or you can substitute, then rearrange. Either way, you'll reach a point where you have the exact same equation to solve, finding that missing variable. All right, gang, again, raise your hand if you need it. Talk to your neighbor if we're not in silent mode. And send me an email if you're at home. Look forward to working with you and getting this understood, because it's actually kind of a big deal, not just not the volume part, just how to use a formula. That's the main focus on this section. Have a great evening.